You feel the power of the praise, the power of the love flowing through these beings, the power of commitment and dedication flowing through Marianne Lewis with her magnificent creativity. And I want you to own that within yourself. I want you to, whatever you see that is beautiful and loving and creative and innovative and resourceful and magnificent, I want you to understand that that which you can see is that which you can be. It's within you. This is what it means to have the mass celebration of the Christ, which is our theme of the month. We're completing that particular theme and coming to an understanding that the holy days are literally, figuratively, metaphorically, spiritually about each and every one of us opening ourselves up to the beauty and the love and the harmony and the wholeness and the infinite good that is within our very being, within our very soul. And during this time of the year, as I have been saying for the last couple of weeks, when individuals are in a vibration of celebration, a vibration of generosity, a vibration of embracing a dynamic peace, a compassion, a love, a generosity of joy, this is what we call spiritual high tide. And during a spiritual high tide where all boats are lifted, we deepen our practice and become vigilant and sober in our awareness so that we are up-leveling our practice. Oftentimes, people will go into practice or prayer when there's a state of emergency. They think God is like a 911 call only. But in a spiritual community, we encourage individuals to realize that the presence of God is 411 as well. It gives you the transformational information and knowledge that is necessary on a daily basis to live a fulfilled life. And then we become aware, of course, and many of you may have experienced this, and that is sometimes during this time of the year, there is a sadness that emerges. There's a feeling of loss and loneliness, particularly when individuals are going through periods of missing family members who may have transitioned, and this might be their first time not having that individual around the holidays, or maybe it's been a couple of years of grieving. So oftentimes this is the time of year where there's an energy of bereftness that takes over as well. And then there's also an awareness of that oftentimes during this time that the inner unhealed areas of ourselves come to surface as well. And people are more easily triggered by things that are going on. And so we embrace an opportunity to give ourselves a deep embrace, a deep love, and have compassion on ourselves and compassion on other individuals, because we do not know what individuals are growing through. So we learn to give each other during this season and as a way of life. We learn to give each other the benefit of the doubt during this time of the year as we're either celebrating or as we are transmuting things that are coming up at this particular time. We seek to take nothing personal, but to have an inner realization that there's something brewing within us. We're either in the period of something growing and manifesting and poking its head above the soil, or we're in a period of gestation where there's darkness and there's a seed that has been planted that hasn't quite come to fruition yet. All of this is about the mass celebration of the Christ, where there was Jesus absolutely going into the stillness and the silence in the desert for 40 days or 40 nights, and then coming into beginning his ministry of healing and upliftment and inspiration and transformation. Wherever we are in our own journey, we take as the example of this individual, and we hold ourselves to a high standard of spiritual practice, mass, a celebration of the Christ. The shadow side of this time of the year, of course, is gross commercialism and materialism and consumerism, of which we love gift giving. We want to participate in that, but not to the detriment of ourselves, expanding our credit lines and going into debt. That is not a gift to anyone. at all. We want to give love. We want to share within whatever we can give at this particular time, but we don't go into the mass commercialism of Christmas or any of the other holidays. We stay above the fray, and we ask ourselves, how can we be an instrument of compassion, of love, of peace, and of joy, and of harmony, and wholeness? And as we discussed last night, continuing the theme of last night, as Dion Raymond reminded her, and she said, I'm still on fire from last night. How many of you participated in last night? Any of you seen that service? 6 of you did. It was great. Many of you probably seen it out there in Agape land. But the theme, of course, was the miracle continues. And we began with an awareness that the first miracle that we discussed and that we embraced was the miracle of birth, the miracle that we exist at all. The Native Americans often say that the first miracle is just the miracle of existence, that we exist. How often do you wake up in the morning and just say, I'm just so grateful that I am. I'm grateful that I exist. I'm grateful that I have this precious human incarnation. I'm just grateful that I am alive. That is a miracle in and of itself. Sometimes we take that for granted. Sometimes we don't realize how precious our incarnation is, and we allow our minds to be flooded with the issues that have more issues than tissues. We allow our mind to be flooded with our to-do list. We allow for our mind to be caught with all of the things going on in the world, and we don't stop and take a breath and say, oh my God, I exist. I'm alive. That's a miracle. Out of the polarities of the sperm and the ovum coming together and creating a space for the spirit to imbue living biology, that's miraculous, you see. And then the miracle continues that we get to be on the earth plane of existence and actually go on a journey of unfoldment and discovery, allowing nothing to be wasted. The losses, the gains, nothing to be wasted. The pains and the fears, nothing to be wasted. The mistakes and the insights and the revelations. So everything on the journey allows us to learn a lesson that transmutes itself into a blessing so that we can discover our real nature and being. And so the miraculous happens through the journey on the path to awakening to be the Christ presence. That is to activate our own inner genius. Jesus was a spiritual genius. To activate our own inner genius so we become grateful for the journey. At times it's difficult to be grateful for the journey because there may be blocks, there may be roadblocks, there may be our back is against the wall, we don't know how to get out of it, things of that particular nature, but we become aware through spiritual practice that there is a vibrational frequency of the timeless, of which the miraculous reveals itself. When your back is against the wall, the presence of God doesn't know any wall. It only knows itself. And as we come to an understanding, there's always a way out of no way. When we tune into the power and the presence and the love of God, then that which is in the way becomes the way for us to become more of ourselves. We're grateful for the journey of unfoldment, you see? So grateful. And then the third aspect of the miraculous is when the human aspect of ourselves, the external aspect of ourselves, that which was created by time and experience and heredity, that which was created by our interpretation of experience, that forged dimensions of the constellation of our shifting personalities, gives way to the divine, gives way to the Christ, gives way to the power and the presence and the love of God within us. That is the second birth. First birth into the incarnation. Second birth, to really be born again, is to be aware that your life is hid with Christ in God, you see? Your life is the presence of God. We awaken to that insight after insight after insight after insight. And so we realize that our journey is about the unfoldment of this dynamic light that lights up every man, every woman, every they, every them, that enters into the planet. We are born again into the eternal power and presence and the love of God. And then we become aware that this journey, it's a love thing. You know, say that out loud. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. Our very community is named love. Agape means unconditional love, the love without agenda, the love under any and all conditions. It's a vibrational frequency of the generosity of the Spirit moving through us. So when we hear Yeshua ben Joseph in the book of Matthew saying that we must love God with all of our heart, all of our soul, and all of our mind, it's a vibrational reminder that we are to fall in love with this presence that is invisible, yet indivisible, of which we have projected all of our sometimes inadequate understanding about the presence onto it. Sometimes historically you see where individuals have projected an angry figure and called it God, and a God that needs anger management and called that God, and a God that shuffles people from heaven to hell based on mistakes that they have made. But when we understand what Jesus said, that God is spirit, and that we would worship God in spirit and in truth, we don't have a fear of God, we have an awe of the presence of that which is invisible and that which is everywhere. He said, love God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. And then he rushes to say, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then he went on to say, these are the greatest commandments. Everything that I've ever taught. Kingdom of God is within. Kingdom of heaven is at hand. The ground upon which you are standing is holy. It is done unto you as you believed. He said, loving God and loving your neighbor are the greatest commandments, you see. And so he helped us in this love thing. Jesus was a love man, okay? He was a love man. And so in these greatest commandments, he redefined neighbor. Oftentimes, neighbor is defined by the person that lives next door to you in your physical neighborhood. Sometimes it's defined by those of your kin. Sometimes it's defined by those born in the nation you were born in. Sometimes it's defined by those who share your similar religious background, those that share your sexual orientation, those that share your national boundaries. Jesus was saying to us that everyone is your neighbor. Do not limit your love to your kin. Do not limit your love to those people that you like. Do not limit your love to those people that you love personally. He said, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, here's the tricky part. You can only love your neighbor as yourself to the degree that you love yourself. Because oftentimes we don't want to wish our self-love on anyone. You see? This is the tricky part. So when we come to an understanding in mystical truth, when we come to an understanding in metaphysical truth, when we come to an understanding of the shifting constellation of personalities, and when we come to an understanding that there's wounds within the individual, there's traumas, there's unhealed areas, when we come to an understanding that we live as a total projection of what's within us onto other people and onto the world, when we really own that and begin to understand that the world that we live in is primarily a world that we are projecting from within ourselves. A friendly person lives in a friendly world. A loving person lives in a loving world. A generous person lives in a prosperous world. A fearful person lives in a fearful world. When we own that, we're basically projecting unconscious, subconscious, and conscious tendencies onto the world and totally take responsibility for it. So that blame, shame, and guilt are not a part of our practice. Blame makes you a victim. Shame and guilt allow the ego to keep you small. We stop and we take responsibility for whatever it is we're feeling in any given moment. And instead of saying he, she, they, them are making me feel this way, or the world is making me feel fearful, we just own it. Now in psychoanalytical technology, the key vibrational is why. Why does a person feel this way? Where did it come from? Did it happen when they were in their first 7 years of their childhood? Did it happen later on in life? You know, metaphysical healing doesn't ask why, it asks what. In other words, because the what is present. Doesn't matter where it came from, it's present now. It's operating now. Now, this is all about loving the neighbor now. I haven't forgot where I'm going. So when you stop and you just own what's happening, and then you observe it without judgment, no judgment about it. It's no, I'm spiritual, I shouldn't feel bad. I've been going to Agape for 20 years. Why am I having an emotional situation? No judgment. You just look at it. And then you stop. In your observation, you establish an intention to wake up, and you surrender it. And it begins to transmute itself through observation. Observation leads to transformation. And now, with that deep, loving embrace that you have for yourself, because there's no judgment here, there's compassion here. Now you can love your neighbor as yourself because you're falling in love with yourself, not projecting onto people, but to actually feeling your connection to the presence, so that you're not projecting all the good onto somebody else and admiring them, because sometimes admiration is veiled envy. You see, it's like I'm admiring them, but inside I wish I was them. Why do they have all the good luck? Oh, sometimes admiration is veiled envy or jealousy. But you start to own everything about yourself. And now you're able to love your neighbor as yourself. Because you're loving your true self and allowing it to be active. You're no longer afraid to be great. You're no longer afraid to be successful. You're no longer afraid to love. You're no longer afraid to give. You're no longer afraid to forgive. Your heart is open. You're no longer afraid. And often people have an unconscious fear to let their light shine because they have an unconscious fear of being an object of jealousy or envy. They want to be liked. So they would rather hold in their love and their beauty, unconsciously, mind you, because they don't want other people to think they're all that. Well, that's too bad. You are all that. You are all that and more. And so you begin to let your light so shine through this dynamic self-love and appreciation that you discover that love triumphs over fear. I had a counseling session early this week with this young man. It was kind of a moment of an emergency that he was going through. So I stopped and we had a moment together. Well, it was a long moment. And he just said he was incessantly in fear. And so I said, really? I said, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I ask you why you're afraid? He says, my son. I'm afraid for the safety of my son. I said, is there anything going on of an emergency nature around his son? He said, nope. There's nothing going on. He's learning to drive. He's going to school. I just wake up and I'm just afraid for his life. There's so many things going on in the world. There's all kinds of stuff that people are going through and growing through. I'm just afraid for him. And so I said, okay, I want you to stop for a moment. I want you to think, first of all, as you close your eyes, I want you to think, how much do you love your son? Just allow that to take over your awareness. So he began to consider how much he loved his son. And then I said, now expand it. How much do you love this presence of God? And he started to expand that. And I said, now expand that love of your son and love of God to your neighbor, to the presence of God, to the world. Then I said, now where's the fear? He said, I don't feel it anymore. I said, fear and love can't occupy the same space. You are to be genuinely concerned for your son, but you're not to be in worry. You're not to be in fear. You have a psychic connection with him because you're dad. And what you are, the fantasies that you're having about things that could possibly happen to him are thought forms that you don't want around him. You want to be concerned about him, but you want to be in love with the presence of God. You want to love him. This is why it is written, it's a love thing. Well, that's me. This is why it is written that perfect love casts out all fear. Perfect love casts out all fear. So as we're moving through a time of great transformation on the planet, and so many things are up on the planet in which the media says in substance, if it bleeds, it leads, showing us the lowest common denominator of the human experience and everything that could go bad in us. We can catch this, we can catch that. There's a war. There's all manner of things happening on the planet in a time in which our mind is bombarded with all manner of things to be afraid of. And then thus, as I mentioned last night, that activating our survival instinct over thriving, over creativity, over generosity, over resourcefulness. That survival instinct is so jacked up, and the adrenaline is so flowing that it activates all the places within us that are wounded, that are fearful. And so individuals are walking as the walking wounded. We have a way to come back to love. And that is just think about somebody that you love. Allow that to come into your heart. Expand that in how much you love the presence of God. Invisible as it may be, but indivisible from you. And if you keep coming back to love, perfect love casts out all fear. Love triumphs over fear. And then what happens? When the survival instinct is in its right place and you're not jacked up on adrenaline to survive, now you become available to transformational knowledge, insight, revelation, guidance. You have a level of safety about yourself, a level of well-being, and the fantasies that you have about everything that could go wrong. And the fantasies about people you might not like, and you have fantasies about them, negativity. You stop, and you consider how much you love anyone on the planet. It could be your dog. You just feel the vibration of love. And you allow those thought forms to now emerge. How much you love. How much you love. Unconditionally, how much you love. No agenda, how much you love. And then the response, you'll hear Yeshua ben Joseph say in substance, I give thanks for thou hearest me always. Meaning, I give thanks that there is a vibrational response to where I am living. You love, you love, you love. There's a vibrational response to that. Your mind becomes clear. You give yourself the benefit of the doubt without judgment. There's spaciousness. You give others the benefit of the doubt. And what happens? You begin to live in a friendly world. You begin to live in a joy-filled world. Now, others around you may not be living in that world. They may be thinking you're a little bit odd. They may be thinking you're a little bit too happy. What have you been drinking? Christmas cheer, little rum in the eggnog. But you'll be able to say, yeah, I got some spirit. But it's the invisible spirit of the living God that is becoming active in me. It's a love thing, baby. It's an unconditional love thing. Now, if you become rooted in this awareness, you see, you will not fall prey to the contagion of a cancel culture that has the tendency to just cancel people. Now, there are individuals on the extreme poles that are so out of touch with their God self that they do destructive things. They maim, they kill, they hurt in history and in the present moment. But primarily, most people are just trying to move through life and in a way that brings about a level of peace and joy and wisdom and harmony for them and their families, and people make mistakes along the way. But you will not seek to cancel people. You will allow the fantasy of your mind to be being in loving integrity with the presence. So that psychically, you're giving off the dynamic of a peace, a dynamic of love, the dynamic of generosity, dynamic of creativity, and then you'll say, thank you, life. I know that thou is hearing me always. Thou is vibrating and responding to my vibration and to my frequency now. Now. You're all adults now. So, I've said this recently in services. A lot of the things that we're growing through, we don't blame ourselves, because unless you were raised by enlightened parents, you did not learn going through school how to expand your consciousness, how to emotionally heal yourself. It wasn't a part of the curriculum at all. You just kind of did your best and held things in and projected things out and vented, even though venting has no transformational value at all. You didn't embrace it and transmute it and observe it and surrender it at all. You didn't change it. You didn't. You did not. But now you can. Now you can take a class. Now you can study. Now you can come into high fellowship. Now you can affirmatively pray. Now you can meditate. Now you can vision. Now you can be around people that have high visionary conversations. Now you can come to an understanding that it's a love thing. Say it. It's a love thing.
It's a love thing.
It is a love thing. It is a love thing. So I know that you're reverberating around the world with that vibration and frequency, so that as we're taking full responsibility for our own life, taking nothing personally, that's the tricky part of loving our neighbor as ourself. So now we're loving our neighbor as our true self, not loving our neighbor, projecting our unhealed areas onto other people. We're owning it without guilt, without shame, without blame. It's just what's happening presently. It's just a thought that's become an emotion. But now it's becoming transmuted into a higher frequency by soulful observation, intentionality, spiritual practice. We become free. And then you live in a world. This is what Yeshua ben Joseph meant when he said, in the world, there will be trials and tribulations. Then he gave us a spiritual practice. He said, but be of good cheer, because I've overcome the world. Lift your vibration and overcome that world of appearances and live in a different world. He gave you the phrase, what I have done, you can do. And greater things than these shall you do. That's empowerment. He didn't come to say, woo, look at me, I'm great. He came to say, look at you. You're magnificent. You're beautiful. You just don't know it. You just don't know it because you've misidentified yourself with your body. You've misidentified yourself with the color of your skin, your national origin, who your parents were, what school you went to. You have an identity crisis. But we say, Christ, the hope of glory is within you. That's your ultimate identity. The activation of your spiritual potential that comes like a thief in the night. In a moment you think not. In a moment thinkingness is dissolved. In the stillness of the night, in the stillness of your quietude. Wow. I was blind, but now I see. It's a love thing. And I am free. Oh, I heard my brother Carl Anderson speak to me earlier. He said, Beckwith, remember the 5 B's. Be brief, brother, be brief. And so, as we allow you to move through your day, and we allow for our staff to be released, I invite you into a moment of prayer with me this morning. As we hear the vibrational frequency of Jesus the Christ saying, Dear God, Lord Almighty, I'm grateful that thou hearest me always. I'm grateful that thy responds to my vibration. And as my vibration is lifted into the consciousness of the highest heaven, there is a response. And so we lift ourselves into the highest heaven, the highest realm of ever-expanding good, by being grateful and thankful and appreciative that we exist at all. We lift ourselves into the highest heaven by being grateful that we're on a journey of discovery, uncovering the good that's within us and allowing it to be activated. We lift ourselves into the vibrational frequency of being grateful that there is the Christ, the hope of glory in the midst of us, and that it is being activated through our intentionality, our willingness, our deep and soulful surrender. And in this consciousness of gratitude, the pure recognition of the presence that is everywhere becomes so active within us that we see the presence that is never in absence. It's in the midst of us. It's a love thing. We're loving God with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our mind. Not the man in the sky, but the presence that's never in absence. We're worshiping God in spirit and in truth, and loving our neighbor as ourselves, the greatest commandments. It is in this awareness that we're able to recognize the presence now more easily, because we're looking for it. And as we're recognizing this dynamic presence that is everywhere, we're feeling a deep sense of oneness with it. I am what thou art, and thou art what I am. We're recognizing this presence everywhere, and it is the vibration of the word that I'm speaking for each and every individual here, and everyone around the globe is here. Because we can't get there from here. But when we get to the so-called there, there is here. Because God is everywhere. So I speak the word for each and every one of us today, on this Christmas day, that we light up from within like a Christmas tree, a Hanukkah bush. That light that lights up every individual that comes to the planet is lighting up from the base of our spine to the top of our head. There's an activation of the chakras, spinning properly. Our meridians are flowing. Woo! The coherence of the brain is happening. There's a smile on our face. The activation of our potential is happening. Oh, the mass celebration of the Christ is happening now. I feel it in my bones for such a time as this. Oh, we give thanks for this. I want you to feel this in your bones now. Marianne, help them feel this frequency for a moment.
Were heavy and I could not fly, haunted by dreams that were meant to come true. But love was there and I could not see it. it, but the voices of salvation came shining through you. God is all.
You can sing that.
There is. We say God is all there will ever be. God is all there is. God is all there will ever be.
And that is the truth being sung. God is all there ever is. God is all there will ever be.